Alex Layton woke up in bed in their spacious home in Riverwood. The sun was shining through the cracks of the curtains, but a feeling of unease he couldn't explain had been hovering over him since the morning. He looked at his watch. It was 8:30. Emily was usually already in the kitchen making coffee and playing with their cat Lawrence, but this morning the house was silent. Alex got up and looked for his wife, but she wasn't in the bedroom. The kitchen was empty, but on the table was her favorite mug with the inscription "The world belongs to dreamers," which still had the remains of cold coffee in it. Maybe she went out shopping? Alex thought, but her keys and wallet were still in their place. When Alex returned to the living room, he noticed something strange. The cushions on the couch were scattered, and a lamp was overturned on the floor. On the wall near the stairs, he could see a faint stain that looked like traces of blood. His heart began to beat faster. He called Emily, but there was no answer. As he got closer to the stain, Alex noticed something else. A small section of the parquet near the fireplace was slightly damaged, as if it had been scratched or moved. Concerned, Alex called the police. The operator asked him for details in a calm voice, but each question only made Alex feel more and more guilty, even though he hadn't done anything. "Your wife could have just gone for a walk or to a friend's house," the operator said. But Alex knew that Emily would not have left the house in that condition. Until the police arrived, Alex wandered around the house, trying to find any trace of her. The bathroom was clean. The bedroom looked like it hadn't been cleaned in a long time. He stopped at a shelf with photos of them looking happy. One of the photos was special, from their wedding, where Emily was holding a bouquet of white roses. Now those moments seemed distant and almost unreal. The police arrived 40 minutes later. Detective Martha Crane and her partner Ben Wallace entered the house, carefully examining every detail. Alex tried to explain that he didn't understand anything, but their cold stares only increased his anxiety. The detectives began their inspection, while Alex stayed in the corner of the living room. The police quickly launched an investigation, as the circumstances of Emily's disappearance raised serious suspicions. Detective Martha Crane, a woman with many years of experience, took control of the case. Her partner, Junior Detective Ben Wallace, assisted in every aspect. Their first step was a thorough inspection of the house. Martha noticed a mess in the living room, a knocked-over lamp, scattered pillows, and a damaged section of parquet by the fireplace. A trail of blood on the wall near the stairs was immediately recorded as evidence. "Someone was obviously in a hurry or fighting here," she said quietly. They found several interesting things in the house. On the kitchen table was a box of clues, part of a traditional quest that Emily organized for Alex every year on their anniversary. Inside the box was a piece of paper with an inscription, "The first place we kissed." This detail surprised the detectives and at the same time seemed suspicious. Marta invited Alex in for a detailed interrogation. He sat in the living room with his head in his hands. "She used to do this quest every year, but this time, it doesn't look right," he said, barely containing his emotions. The detectives exchanged glances. Meanwhile, Ben looked around the bedroom. Emily's jewelry was on her nightstand, and her clothes were neatly hung in the closet. Everything looked as if she was about to return. "Maybe this was planned," he said, pointing to the full set of luggage that was still untouched in the dressing room. Detectives also began interviewing neighbors. Ms. Grayson, who lived across the street, recalled seeing a hooded man leave the Layton home around 8 a.m. Her testimony became important evidence, although her description of the stranger was vague. During the first press briefing, Marta said that all possible versions were being considered, including kidnapping and escape. However, the media had already begun to create their own theories, focusing on Alex. His emotional detachment, even when addressing the press, looked strange to many. When the detectives returned to the police station, they received new information. Analysts found Alex's fingerprints on a broken lamp in the living room. This became another item in the list of evidence that gradually formed his image as a potential criminal. The real turning point in the investigation came when the police came across Emily's diary. This diary, found hidden in her desk drawer, contained a detailed description of their married life. Starting with pages about romance, happy moments, and shared dreams, the entries gradually became darker. Emily described how Alex changed after losing his job. She wrote about his anger, irritation, and distance. "Sometimes it feels like we are two strangers living under the same roof," she wrote. One of the most shocking statements was about physical violence. "Today he threw a magazine at me. It didn't hurt, but it hurt my soul. When I cried, he just turned away." The diary also contained more disturbing notes. At the end it read, "I am afraid that one day Alex may move on. I don't know if I will be able to escape if this happens." These notes became crucial evidence in the case. Martha and Ben realized that this diary, even if its authenticity was in question, could finally shape public opinion. At this time, Alex was becoming increasingly isolated. At press conferences, he looked distant, which aroused even more suspicion. Journalists learned about his affair with a young student, Jules Riley, who appeared on the front pages of the tabloids. Her testimony about their meetings further reinforced the idea that Alex was dissatisfied with his marriage. Additional evidence confirmed the suspicions. Alex's fingerprints were found at the site of the damaged parquet. It also turned out that a few days before Emily's disappearance, he had withdrawn a significant amount of money from their joint account. However, Alex denied his guilt. "I didn't touch her, I didn't do anything that could have scared her. She was the one who planned our future, we were just going through a hard time," he shouted during the interrogation. But the detectives already saw him as the main suspect. Marta decided it was time to move on. She prepared an arrest warrant, but something told her that there was more to the story than meets the eye. The truth about Emily came out quite unexpectedly. Her disappearance was not a crime, but an elaborate plot. After several days of investigation and media coverage, it turned out that Emily was alive. She was staying in a motel on the outskirts of another city under an assumed name. Her plan was almost perfect. Emily wanted to take revenge on Alex for the years she thought she had lost and for his betrayal of Jules. She spent months creating a scenario for her disappearance. All the evidence found by the police, the diary, the scattered items in the house, the bloodstains, were part of her cunning plan to make Alex the prime suspect. Emily spent her time at the motel enjoying the feeling of being in control. She watched the news, excited to see how her story captivated the entire country. However, her perfect plan began to show cracks when the money she had hidden before she disappeared began to run out. She also failed to take into account the human factor. Other motel guests began to suspect something was wrong, and the owner of the establishment started asking too many questions. Desperation made Emily turn to Desmond Vale, her ex-boyfriend who was still in love with her. She had a plan of her own, and she carried it out with impressive coolness. Desmond had always been a man who sought to protect Emily, and this time he too opened the doors of his luxurious mansion to her. He believed her every word that Alex was an abusive man who had humiliated and intimidated her for years. Emily knew that Desmond would be the perfect hiding place and tool for the next phase of her plan. In the early days, she played the role of a scared woman in need of support. She allowed Desmond to take care of her, cook her meals, bring her tea in bed, and try to comfort her. When he offered to stay with her forever, she responded with gratitude, but almost imperceptibly directed his actions, controlling every step. However, Emily realized that Desmond's trust was only a temporary resource. She had to get rid of him so that there would be no witnesses who could question her version of events. One evening she prepared a staging. It all started with an innocent conversation in which she hinted that Alex might have been stalking her. She asked Desmond not to leave her alone to create a tense atmosphere. When he fell asleep, Emily carefully prepared the crime scene. She rearranged the furniture to create the appearance of a struggle, left traces of broken glass on the floor, and turned the table over. Then she took a knife from the kitchen, which she had wiped clean of her fingerprints beforehand. When Desmond woke up to the noise, she started screaming as if someone had broken into the house. Desmond, confused and distraught, rushed to her side, but at that moment Emily stabbed him to death. Her face was covered in tears as she called the police, telling them how she had to defend herself against her captor. The police arrived to find a scene that looked undeniable: signs of a struggle, broken things, Desmond's body with a knife in his chest, and a terrified Emily, shaking in tears. Her story of how Desmond held her captive and attacked her when she tried to escape sounded believable. She skillfully added details that were consistent with her story. She described how she feared for her life and how she had to strike back in an attempt to defend herself. This murder was classified as self-defense, and no one doubted her words. Emily returned to Riverwood as a heroine who had managed to survive such horrific circumstances. News of her heroic escape spread quickly, and her return became a sensation. Journalists competed to interview her, and neighbors organized a party in her honor. Emily seemed to have successfully embodied the role of a victim who was able to overcome all difficulties. Emily's return came as a real shock to both Alex and the entire city. Imagine, it's the middle of the evening, Alex is sitting in his house, which now seems empty and hostile. Suddenly, there is a knock at the door. He opens it, and there is Emily, exhausted but alive. She is dressed in simple clothes, her hair is disheveled, and her face shows signs of hardship. She falls into his arms, saying, "I ran away. He wanted to kill me." Alex cannot believe his eyes. A wave of relief washes over him, but at the same time, distrust awakens in his soul. His instincts tell him that this story is just the tip of the iceberg. He helps Emily into the house, sits her down on the couch, and brings her water. She tells him about her horrific experience of being kidnapped. Her voice breaks and tears stream down her cheeks as she describes her kidnapper, a man who insidiously trapped her. The police arrive at the house a few minutes later. Emily immediately becomes the center of attention. Her story is a classic escape narrative, full of details that seem all too accurate. She describes how she managed to escape by making her way through the woods, and how she walked for several hours until she found a place from which she could call the rescue service. News of Emily's return spreads instantly. Journalists line up outside the Layton home. For the media, it is a real sensation. A woman whom everyone thought was a murder victim has returned alive. Reporters want to know every detail. At the press conference organized the next day, Emily looks fragile but strong. She talks about her suffering, avoiding too many specific questions. Her speech brings tears to the audience and reinforces the image of a hero who survived a brutal situation. For Alex, this return is a difficult emotional dilemma. On the one hand, he is glad that his wife is alive. On the other hand, some details don't fit together in his head. Her behavior seems to him too deliberate, even theatrical. She seems to be reading a text from the stage that fits perfectly into what people want to hear. When they are alone, Emily begins to act as if nothing has happened. She returns to her normal routine, insisting that they need to move on. She also announces that she is pregnant, and this news shocks Alex. He's not sure whether to believe her, but she plays on his feelings, convincing him to stay together for the sake of the child. Meanwhile, Detective Martha Crane also senses that something is wrong. Her years of experience tell her that Emily's story has gaps. She begins to reanalyze all the evidence, looking for something she might have missed. Marta is not going to let this case go unsolved, even if society has already decided that the heroine has returned home. After Emily's return, Alex's life turned into an endless nightmare. What might have seemed like a happy ending to others was actually the beginning of an even deeper trap. Emily, now in control of the situation, played the role of the perfect wife, but her behavior hid new layers of manipulation. Alex quickly realized that Emily had devised a plan in which she was merely a pawn. Her pregnancy, which she announced immediately upon her return, was a key part of that plan. She was using the unborn child as a way to keep him close. "We have to be together for the sake of our baby," she insisted, forcing Alex to keep quiet about all his doubts. Alex tried to find a way to escape, but every step he took only tightened the noose. Emily carefully controlled all aspects of their life together. She closely monitored his actions, forcing him to abandon the idea of going to the police or friends. Her trick was to always remain a victim in the eyes of society, while Alex increasingly looked like an emotionally unstable man who could not cope with the situation. Meanwhile, Detective Martha Crane continued her own investigation. She could sense that something didn't add up in Emily's story, but every step she took toward the truth was met with a lack of direct evidence. Emily was skillful at covering her tracks, and society already perceived her as a heroine who had survived a terrible tragedy. Martha realized that if she made a mistake, she risked ruining her career. Alex, however, could not wait any longer. He began to collect his own evidence against Emily. Looking through her old letters, emails, and phone records, he gradually discovered her carefully planned game. He found notes that confirmed her pregnancy could have been a fake. But each piece of evidence was not convincing enough to counter her manipulations in front of the public. The climax came one evening when Emily organized a dinner party for their friends and journalists. She skillfully told the story of their new chapter in life, painting a picture of an ideal family. Alex, who could no longer stand this farce, tried to expose her right during the dinner, accusing her of lying. But Emily was ready for it. She cried and accused Alex of being mentally unstable and trying to ruin their future. This incident completely isolated Alex. His friends began to question his sanity, and the media covered the incident as further evidence of his aggressive behavior. Alex realized that he was now not only trapped, but completely isolated from anyone who could help him. Emily had achieved her goal. She had created the perfect illusion of a life in which Alex was locked in a cage. He knew that any move he made against her would only make things worse. However, deep down, he was still looking for a way to break out, even if it meant risking everything. Martha Crane, feeling guilty for not being able to help Alex, decided to go against the system. She began to collect evidence at her own risk, realizing that the truth, no matter how horrific, must be revealed. Alex's life after Emily's return finally turned into a trap that pulled him in more and more every day. From the outside, their marriage seemed perfect. They were the kind of couple that neighbors, friends, and even strangers admired. But behind the closed doors of their home in Riverwood, an intense struggle was raging. Emily was in complete control of every aspect of their lives. She insisted that Alex agree with all her decisions, from family finances to daily schedules. "It's for the sake of our child," she repeated every time Alex tried to question her actions. She used the pregnancy as a shield, knowing that Alex was afraid of harming the unborn baby. In the community, Emily continued to play the role of the ideal wife and mother-to-be. She organized charity events, appeared on television, and constantly told her inspiring story of how she managed to escape from her kidnapper. Her image became so popular that any attempts by Alex to show the other side of their marriage were instantly dismissed as victimization. Meanwhile, Alex began to lose himself. He became increasingly isolated, avoiding even the few friends who remained close to him. His behavior changed. He became nervous, withdrawn and despondent. Every time he tried to expose Emily or tell the truth about her manipulations, she skillfully convinced others that these were just the consequences of his mental instability. "I want to help him, but he doesn't want help," she would say in public with tears in her eyes. Alex decided to contact a lawyer. He hoped to find a way to divorce Emily, avoiding public stigma and losing custody of their unborn child. But even here, Emily was one step ahead. A few days after his visit to the lawyer, the media reported new threats to Emily. She stated that Alex had become aggressive and that she feared for her life. This further strengthened her position as a victim, and Alex finally lost any chance of winning this fight. At this time, Detective Martha Crane continued to collect evidence against Emily. She found suspicious financial transactions that indicated that Emily had falsified her kidnapping claims. She also found recordings of conversations where Emily confessed to her former lover Desmond Vale that her return was only part of a larger game. But even with this evidence, Martha couldn't just go public with it. Society was too attached to Emily's image as a victim. Alex, realizing that all his attempts to escape from this marriage were doomed to failure, began to live by Emily's rules. He learned to keep quiet, hide his emotions, and adapt to her demands. However, deep down, he continued to look for a way to escape. His last hope was Martha, who, despite the risk of losing her career, was ready to continue fighting for the truth. The marriage between Alex and Emily turned into a prison, where each of them played their part in a false play. Alex now realized that even the worst truth would be better than this lie. But can he find the strength to fight again when the whole world believes his wife?